Hello there, M.Strange here. In this video I just want to talk a little bit about rigging and character animation control, I guess styles and philosophies. Because when I first started out, before I was making my own custom rigs and characters and all that stuff, I'm probably doing stuff like a lot of people do, where I would download pre-made rigs or characters and try to use those. And a lot of those were just too complicated for me. Like, I'm not trying to be super Pixar or whatever animator dude. I just want to, tell my stories, animate my characters. And so I came up with a simple solution, and I want to share some of that stuff with you. So let's just look at a couple different styles. So this is a character for my new film, and this is a simplistic, I guess, style that I'm going with, in that I like having all my controls in the visual selector. I don't like having them on the screen because, I'm trying to make films, so to see my character in the scene, I want them to be... I want the least amount of distraction. So in some of these other controls, like, let's look at this character. So see, your character's in a scene where he's about to shoot somebody or something, and you're trying to get into it or whatever, but then you have all this crap everywhere, like all these sliders, and to me this stuff is distracting. Like, you can turn it off, but I mean, I'd rather not even have this stuff there. I mean, I guess animators want it here so they can go like this and like grab stuff. But this style never really did it for me. I think this like clutters the screen. And so if you're downloading rigs and you don't like the look of them, or they have too many things, just remember that you can always make your own and get rid of all this stuff. And this stuff actually slows down playback too. So, but I'm not, trying to put down like these rigs that come with Cinema 4D. It's just they wanted to show you a bunch of different ways you can do it and give you the most options. So this one has visual selector and all the nulls and stuff. So, and that's something that a lot of animators use. They use nulls, and you might find on your rigs where they have these nulls to grab onto and all these different things. But the thing that really matters about a character rig or setup, if you ask me, again, I'm no expert, I just do things my way, is how does it perform? And how do you get the most performance out of your rig, and how do you test rigs to see, what really works? And that's something I wanted to show you in this video, the way I do it. So my philosophy is that I want the simplest controls that are required for me to do what I need to do, and I want the rig to perform. I want it to be really fast, because there's nothing more frustrating when you're trying to animate a scene and your playback's like under real time. So if you're making a movie, 24 frames per second would be real time, and if it's like 10 frames and things are laggy, it just throws off your timing, screws off your timing, and you can't animate well at all. So what I do is that in the selection filter, I just have polygons on, the HUD on, and axis on. That's all I have on. I don't want to see anything else but the character. And in my controls here, it may look complicated, but this is kind of, honed over hours and hours and hours and thousands of shots that I animated on my stuff. And this is what works for me. So I have IK controls on the hand. This is to grab the hand controller. And again, I don't want to see it here. I just want to get it here. That's what this is for. And then I could click this little button, and then now I can use FK. And these are all for the arms using FK. This is the spine tip. This is for the rest of the body. And then I have my head controls linking to a separate tag, and then when you click here, you have all the facial morphs and all that stuff, right? But before I go too much into that, I want to show you how to test out your rig speed. So press play on the playhead, and frame rate, okay, we don't want all frames on. And then you can see down here, I hope it's not too small on the screen, it gives you a frames per second, so that's how fast it's playing back. And when it's still, it gives you an okay indication. That'll show you how much is being eaten up by expressions, things like that. But I would rather really grab a controller and then move stuff around, because that's really showing you. So this one's about 125 or 120, let's say. So if you wanted to test some of these, you could, can we grab on this guy? We could play this, and you see this one's about 54, which is going to be slower because there's deformations. And then this one needs all this crap on to work. and this one gives you, see, about 26 on my computer. And mine's not the fastest system in the world, but it's pretty decent. So this is something that, you know, this would be way too slow for me to animate with. I would want something at least 2, 3, 4 times faster than real time. Because again, when you have them in a set, you can turn everything off, but you know, when you have them interacting with other characters, that's going to cut it in half. So you want your rig to be as fast as possible. So this would be too slow. And we can check this guy. I think this one's pretty fast. Yeah, so this one's 140. So this would be, this is what you want. You want something this snappy, and you want something that can play back that fast. Because you can have 2 or 3 of these characters. Like, let's see if we duplicated them and then, oops, I guess that doesn't work that way. Whatever. But so you can go through these characters and just, this is how you test them. Grab something, play it back. So this one's about 80, so that's pretty decent. So that's how you test them, because you know, you can have a rig with all the controls in the world, you know, at your fingertips, you know, and have it be really convenient in that way. But if your playback performance sucks, then I mean, a rig is to animate a character, and to do that smoothly, or you know, nicely, or hopefully to make it fun, so it's not so slow. So that's something that you can look at. And so, how are some ways you can speed things up? Well, if you look at this character, I'm using a constraint-based rig. So this is all; these are all separate segments. So that speeds things up a little bit, like not having to deform your character, and using these segments. And for me, it works style-wise too, because I like the look of dolls or marionettes, and that's what my stories are about, including this new film. So it serves 2 purposes: it's a style, and it speeds things up. But something that you could even go further, you know, I could replace, since it's constraints, I could use like boxes and model them into the shape of his limbs, and then replace these with those, so it'd be fewer polys. And if you notice, I have the textures turned off, because that's something that slows down the viewport a lot. So I just go to layer color. That's something that overrides it. And I'm using an older version of Cinema 4D, 11.5, so this may be different. But yeah, turning the textures off, making everything flat, using quick shading, of course, turning off lights and shadows and all that stuff. You want it to be as simple as possible to get the most speed. And something else is that if you don't need them, you want to turn off deformers and generators. You need expressions usually for IK, so you don't want to turn those off. But I just want to show you something. So if you look at my layer browser, I have a layer for the character and a layer for the character's head. And when you're working in the layer browser, you can turn certain things off. So these are generators, deformers, expressions. So if you look at this head, it has all these morph sliders, right, and all this stuff going on. So this eats up viewport speed. So just to show you, so right now I have the head off, and it's about 120 frames per second, right? So if I go and turn the expressions and stuff back on for the head needed to drive the morphs, now you can see the speed is about 65, so it cuts it off in half. So anything you don't need while you're animating a particular part, you know, separate into layers or do things so you don't need it on, because it's really going to slow things down. And so I say to keep things simple when you start out, or you know, I've been doing this for a while, but I still want to keep things simple, is to just use the controls that you need. And the way to find out what you need is to like animate some stuff. And so maybe this had a lot more in it. Maybe I had this shit on screen before too, and then I started working and I realized, you know, I don't need that. I just use these controls. That's how I like to work. So I say work with the simplest possible setup that works for you, that has all the controls you want, and then later add controls if you need them. But when you start off, I say keep it simple. So I mean, of course you need IK controllers. It's good to have solvers in here too if you're doing IK stuff. If you're using switches, if you want to switch stuff on and off, put that in there. You know, and something maybe you didn't know about the visual selector is that when you select an object, you see how when I select the IK controller, it's using the move tool, and then it switches to a joint and it switches to rotate. So if you go in here, you can tell it what tool to select when you click on that, and you can even have it run scripts or commands. So you could create a script to do anything you want using, in my version it's harder to find, but if you've never been into scripting, there's lots of tutorials out there on scripting, but you could go in here, oops, well it's a little too big, oops, what the hell, oh, it's the largest script log in the world. So you know, you can go in here and create scripts to do whatever you want by pulling it off here, pulling your actions off the script log. Look for tutorials on that, you can find it. So you could have scripts to do whatever you want, and you get the command codes for those, and you can put them in here in command. So when you click on one of these, it runs commands. And I know on the newer versions of Cinema 4D, you can have Python too, so you can have it execute a Python script. So you can do tons of stuff like that, but just remember, the more complex you make it, the slower it's going to make things. So, yeah. Just because you see other rigs using all this stuff doesn't mean you have to. And what I'll be doing later is that I'll be making a real simple version of this, my character, or maybe my rig. I want to make it so, I don't know why that broke. Okay. But, there we go. I'm going to give you a simple solution, because I haven't looked too much, but I don't know if there's a real simple rig out there with, like, facial setups, or the facial controls like I have in this one. Because I know if you go back in my videos, you'll see that I gave away my Boxman character, which is actually this rig right here, in the same rig that I'm using now. So, without the head rig. So maybe I'll update this rig with the head so that you can just use it on your characters and replace it. So that's something that I'm going to be working on to hopefully put that out there in the world for some simpler character stuff for people. And just something else I wanted to add about reusing body parts and stuff. So another reason that I use these segmented characters is that you see the hand is a separate object. So the hand, like everything about these hands that I modeled, is in this right hand object. So the solvers, the joints, the geometry, the controls, everything is in this hand, and even the hand tag, which controls the poses of the hand, and then it has a constraint. So the way I work is that instead of redoing all these hand controls like every time, all I have to do is like duplicate this hand, right? And it has a constraint, so it's like stuck. So we want to clear that. Is duplicate this hand, which then I can scale up or down or whatever. And since all my characters are constraint based, and just to prove to you that it still works, see? Since all my characters are constraint based, what I do is just go into a new character and then click on the constraint and then add the hand joint for that new character, and then boom, the hand pops into place, and all I have to do is rescale it and, you know, add the new textures or whatever, but it's finished. So that's something I do to speed things up, because I don't want to redo the same things over and over. So hopefully this was helpful, or kind of, you know, will help you streamline your own rigs and choose the best rig for you. So again, just because you see all these controls everywhere doesn't mean you need them. So there is no one way to work. So, you know, find the way that works for you, because I know a lot of people in 3D animation are like, oh, I gotta do it like the studios do it, or how Animation Mentor or whatever. Maybe that's how you learn, but, you know, just do the way that works for you. And for me, this stuff doesn't work. And I know you can turn it off, but I know a lot of people work with this stuff because, you know, if you had a scene and like all this stuff going on, like I want to be in the mood of the scene, and I don't want to think about, like, I am animating a character, but I want to think more about the acting and the mood and stuff like that, not like being caught up in this like HUD world where I'm really focusing on this crap and not on the actual cinematography or the camera work in my scene. So I know a lot of character animators are just animators, so don't have to worry about that stuff. But if you're making your own films, you know, you're thinking about all that at once, and this stuff is just a big distraction. So I say simplify. Yeah. So I hope this was helpful to someone out there, and until next time, M.String saying bye-bye.